You wake up, but something feels off. Your room looks the same. The mirror still reflects your face. You check your phone, the same apps, same messages, but something underneath it all feels fake. And for a second, a really quiet second, you ask yourself, what if none of this is really you? What if the voice in your head, the opinions you hold, the personality you've crafted, was just a collection of habits, expectations, and fear? You're not crazy. In fact, most people never even get to this point. Most people go their entire lives playing a role they didn't choose. They wear it like a uniform, thinking that's who they are. The good kid, the overachiever, the spiritual one, the smart one, the broken one. We cling to these roles because they give us a sense of safety. And maybe, just maybe, that you've been trying so hard to maintain is actually the very thing standing between you and peace. So ask yourself, who taught you to be this version of you? Was it survival, validation, someone else's expectations? Or was it fear of what would happen if you ever stopped pretending? Because here's the truth. If you've never stopped to look beyond the mask, you might not even know who you are without it. Most people don't realize this, but the person they think they are is actually a collection of reactions, not choices. You were told to be polite, so you became agreeable. You were told to be quiet, so you learned to suppress. You were rewarded when you pleased others. So now you call it kindness, even when it's self-abandonment. This version of you, the one that wakes up with pressure on their chest, the one who overthinks every move, the one who doesn't feel real when they're alone, that version isn't broken. It's just tired of playing a role that was never theirs to begin with. And here's the scary part. The more you try to fix it, the more stuck you become, because you're trying to fix a mask. And masks don't heal. They just crack. That feeling of emptiness, it's not because something's missing. It's because something's been buried. The real you, the one that existed before you were told who to be, has been buried under layers of shoulds. And you don't need to dig through your past to find it. You just have to stop feeding the lie that this version of you, the anxious, pleasing, filtered version, is the only option you have. Because it's not. If you paused for a moment and stripped away every identity you've clung to, the achiever, the caretaker, the smart one, the strong one, what would be left? Who are you when no one's watching? Not what do you do, not how do you look, but who do you feel like in the quiet? Most people never ask that because they're too afraid of the silence, too afraid of realizing they've built a life around an image, not a truth. And the scariest part? That image is often based on survival. You weren't being yourself. You were being safe. You became what protected you. You learned how to read people, anticipate moods, shrink your voice, or overperform. Not because you were born like that, but because at some point it was dangerous not to. That's not a flaw. That's intelligence. That's your nervous system doing its job. But you're not there anymore. You're not a child trying to survive emotional chaos. You're not in that environment anymore, but your identity hasn't caught up to your reality. So now you feel the conflict. You want to grow, but something pulls you back. You want to rest, but guilt creeps in. You want to speak up, but your voice trembles before you even say a word, because your identity is still protecting a version of you that doesn't need protecting anymore. And that's where the real shift begins. You ever notice how exhausting it is to be someone? To be the version of you that has it all together, the version that always knows what to say, how to act, what to hide. It's like constantly wearing a mask, but on the inside, every interaction becomes a performance. Every silence becomes something to fill. Every mistake becomes a threat to the character you've spent years crafting. And worst of all, even when you do everything right, it still never feels like enough. That's because the version of you that you're trying to prove isn't you. It's a construct, a version that was stitched together from other people's expectations, wounds, fears, and standards. You're exhausted not because you're weak, but because you're carrying the emotional weight of a self that was never yours to begin with. Think about it. Who told you that you had to be calm all the time? Who told you that being good meant being silent or agreeable or never asking for more? Who told you that your worth was measured by how productive you are, how busy you stay, or how little you need? The saddest part is, most people never question it. They just live out a story that someone else wrote for them. They carry it like a badge of honor and wonder why they feel numb. But here's what's wild. You can drop it. You can stop performing. You can stop trying to win a game that you never actually signed up for. And it won't make you selfish, or lazy, or lost. It'll make you honest. It'll make you whole. And eventually, it'll make you free. There's this quiet, terrifying moment when you realize you don't actually know who you are, without the version you've been pretending to be. It's like stepping off a stage after years of acting, and suddenly there's no script, no spotlight, and no applause, just silence. But that silence, it's not emptiness, it's space. And space is sacred. That's where healing starts. Not when you fix yourself, not when you become better, more spiritual, more disciplined, but when you stop pretending that you're not already enough. Because healing isn't a checklist. It's not a course. It's not a transformation you force on yourself like a punishment for being human. Healing is what happens when you remove the things blocking it. When you stop clenching, stop hiding, stop trying to prove. When you let yourself be messy. When you let yourself feel, really feel. When you stop managing your emotions like they're liabilities and instead meet them like old friends. Maybe that sadness you've been burying, it's not a flaw to fix. Maybe it's a memory that never got the chance to breathe. Maybe that anger you're ashamed of, it's not ugly. Maybe it's a signal that you've been crossed too many times and never had the words to say, enough. This is what letting go actually looks like. Not detaching from life, but stepping into it without all the armor. Not trying to become someone else, but remembering the person you were before you started editing yourself just to be liked. Healing begins when you no longer need to be impressive and start becoming real. And then something shifts, not loudly, not all at once, but enough that you notice it. You wake up, and your first thought isn't a performance checklist. You're not preparing a version of yourself to present to the world. You're just waking up. And for once, that's enough. You walk into rooms without mentally rehearsing your tone. You let people have their opinions without bending yourself to be more acceptable. You stop over-explaining your feelings to people who never asked about your truth to begin with. And without all that weight, you begin to feel your own life again. The little things, the quiet things, the human things, the sunlight through your window in the morning, the breath that lands fully in your chest without collapsing halfway, the moment where you laugh, not because you're trying to be likable, but because something actually felt light for the first time in a while. You're not living from pressure anymore. You're living from presence. You stop chasing clarity like it's a destination and start noticing how much of it was already inside you once the noise quiets. You stop trying to control how others see you and start caring more about how you feel around them. You stop striving to be spiritual or healed or high value and start valuing honesty over aesthetics. You no longer measure growth by how composed you appear, but by how safe you feel being raw, even in the mess. This isn't about becoming a new person. It's about no longer needing to abandon yourself in order to feel worthy. You don't need to fix your whole life. You don't need to rewrite your entire identity in a single breakthrough. You just need to stop watering the false version of you that was built from fear and start nurturing the one that's been waiting underneath it all. And once you start living like that, from truth, not tension, you start attracting differently, not just people, but experiences, opportunities, energy. Life starts meeting you because you're finally showing up as yourself. No one tells you that being yourself might feel lonely at first, because the moment you stop performing, you stop being the version of you that people are used to. You're quieter in the places where you used to force energy. You stop laughing at things that aren't funny. You say no when you mean it. You don't reach out first just to avoid feeling forgotten. And at first, people don't know what to do with that. They're used to the edited version of you, the one who never made things uncomfortable, who held space even when you had none left for yourself. So when you stop, they might pull back, and that silence can feel sharp. But it's also where you finally hear your own voice clearly. You start to realize how much of your energy went into maintaining peace for others, while your own inner world was chaotic. You notice how often you shrank in small moments, just to keep relationships smooth. You see how many connections weren't built on your truth, but on your performance. That's a heavy truth, but it's also the beginning of freedom. Because when you lose the relationships that only knew the mask, you make space for the ones that want you. Not the version of you that's always okay, always agreeable, always emotionally polished, but the version that's honest, open, and unfiltered. You begin to feel emotionally safer around fewer people, but more yourself everywhere you go. You're not worried about being too much or not enough, because you're done editing yourself down to be digestible. And that kind of truth, it might leave you standing alone for a while, but it's the only path that leads you back home to the person you were before the world told you who to be. This version of you, the one emerging underneath the old roles, it's not brand new. It's been waiting, quietly, patiently, for you to finally stop performing long enough to hear it. Once you stop performing, something strange happens. You're no longer in a hurry to become someone. You stop trying to get back to a version of you that felt more confident, more productive, more in control. You stop forcing timelines on your growth, like healing is a race you have to win to prove you're doing life correctly. Instead, you begin moving differently, slower, but not out of hesitation, out of intention. You listen more, not to noise, but to your body. You notice when you're anxious and choose not to override it just to be convenient. You cancel plans when your energy is low, and you don't feel guilty about it. You don't need a perfect excuse to protect your peace, and decisions start to feel different too. You stop overthinking every step, trying to calculate the right path. You stop asking the world to validate your intuition before you trust it. Because now, you're not making choices from fear, you're making them from alignment. You're not rushing into the next phase of your life to escape this one. You're not looking for some polished identity to step into. You're learning to exist, fully, quietly, and truthfully, without needing to label it. And in that space, you start reclaiming time. Not just hours and days, but mental space that used to be consumed by self-monitoring, emotional labor, and rehearsed behavior. You start remembering what it feels like to enjoy stillness, not as an escape, but as a return. You're not building a better mask. You're creating a life where you don't need one anymore. And that life, it's slower, softer, strangely unfamiliar at first, but peaceful in a way performance never gave you. Because for the first time, you're not becoming a version of yourself to feel worthy. You're just being, and that's finally enough. Maybe the real tragedy was never that you were broken. Maybe the real tragedy is that you were never given the chance to meet yourself fully. Before the world told you who to become, before the edits, before the masks, before the pressure to be everything except real. And if there's a quiet truth beneath all of this, it's this. You were never lost. You were just buried under expectations, under survival patterns, under years of learning how to keep the peace by dimming your light. But now you see it. Now you feel it. That version of you, the raw one, the aware one, the grounded one, has always been there. You don't need to become anything. You don't need to hustle for healing. You just need to stop holding up the version of you that was built from fear and finally give the real you a place to breathe. Let it be messy. Let it be quiet. Let it be unfamiliar. But most importantly, let it be true. If something in this video stirred something in you, if even one part of it made you pause and feel something real, comment, "I'm done performing." Let that be your way of stepping off the stage. Not because you're finished, but because you're finally starting, as you are. And if this felt like home, if you want more space like this, more truth like this, subscribe. We're not here to perform. We're here to remember who we were before we forgot. And that remembering, that's the beginning of everything.